Welcome back, curious minds, to another deep dive. Okay, I want you to picture this for a moment. It's the dead of night, July 5th, 2000.
Right after the 4th of July celebration.
Exactly. You're in Seabrook, New Hampshire. The air probably still smells a bit like fireworks, but it's quiet. Eerily quiet, maybe. Imagine this lonely security shack, maybe just one dim light on inside. A guy watching over a big empty staff parking lot. And then suddenly, that silence is just shattered. A car explodes into flames, fully engulfed.
It's a really intense fire.
And it's not just any car. It belongs to the security guard inside the shack, Curtis Pishon. And supposedly it held his most, prized possessions.
Things that really meant a lot to him.
Right. So he calls 911. But the dispatcher notes something, well, deeply unsettling.
His tone, right.
Yeah. He sounds oddly, almost unnervingly calm. As his car, his stuff, everything is burning to a crisp right there.
It's a strange reaction.
And then just a couple of hours later, maybe around 3:45 a.m., he's gone. Just vanished. Into the dark. Without a trace. Curtis Pishon. He was a former police officer, a Gulf War vet. What on earth happened?
It really does grab you immediately, doesn't it? It feels like the start of some thriller novel, but this is tragically real. A cold case that's, haunted New Hampshire for over 2 decades now.
Yeah.
It's just such a puzzle, so many missing pieces, and some pieces that just, they don't seem to fit together at all.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. This is our deep dive into the perplexing disappearance of Curtis Pishon, that 40-year-old security guard who, like you said, just vanished from his post. We've really dug into the sources for you on this one. Comprehensive reports from WMUR News, official police statements, case files from unsolved.com, even polling insights from podcasts like Murder, She Told.
A good mix of sources.
Yeah, we're going to try and unpack the really strange details around that night, the big investigative challenges that came up, and the different theories that people have thrown around for 20-plus years. Our mission, like always, is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, give you the key insights so you get a really full understanding of why this case is still so baffling.
It really is riddled with oddities, isn't it? And conflicting accounts and, looking back, a series of missed opportunities that make you question, how evidence gets recorded, how fragile it can be. But to really grasp the mystery, I think we need to start with the man himself. Who was Curtis Pishon?
Okay, let's do that. Let's paint a picture of Curtis Pishon. Because our sources make it clear he wasn't just some, random security guard. He had a significant background.
Right.
Retired police officer from Concord, New Hampshire. Also a Gulf War Army veteran. You think about the kind of discipline, the sense of duty that must have been part of who he was.
Absolutely. Those aren't minor details about his life.
But his life took a major detour in 1994. He had to leave the police force. Why? Because he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, MS. How did that condition affect him? And what does it tell us about his life around the time he disappeared?
That's a really crucial point. The MS diagnosis wasn't just a medical footnote. It profoundly impacted his life and potentially everything that happened that night. MS, as you know, affects the brain and spinal cord. For Curtis, it meant his mobility could be really unpredictable. Day to day, it could change.
So some days, okay, other days.
Exactly. On a good day, he might walk around pretty well.
Yeah.
But on a bad day, he could have serious fatigue, numbness, weakness, sometimes needing a cane, or even, reportedly, a folding wheelchair. And he lived alone. So while he was independent, he was also potentially vulnerable if his MS flared up when he was by himself. This varying mobility becomes super important later on.
It definitely sounds like it. And beyond the job and the health stuff, his family described him as someone really attached to his belongings. Our sources, especially those family interviews, they stress this wasn't a guy who was casual about his possessions.
Almost sentimental is the impression I got.
Yeah, a deep connection. And here's the kicker, the detail that becomes so critical. Where did he keep these prized things?
In his car.
In his car.
Yeah.
That specific car that burned. You really need to hold on to that piece of information.
It's absolutely vital because it directly sets up what some people call the calm victim paradox. His family, the people who knew him best, said later that losing those things, especially like that, in a fire, it should have completely devastated him.
They expected grief.
Anger. Yeah, something profound, given how attached he was. But his behavior at the scene, totally different. It just creates this immediate clash between who they knew him to be and what people saw that night.
Okay, so let's get to that trigger event, the car fire. It's 1:42 a.m., July 5th. Curtis Pishon himself calls 911.
He makes the call.
Reports his car is fully ablaze in the staff parking lot. Firefighters, police, they arrive pretty quickly. But what they notice about Curtis just jumps out at them.
That oddly calm description.
Exactly. They noted he was oddly calm. And they saw he'd apparently tried to fight this raging fire with just one single fire extinguisher. And failed, obviously.
Yeah, a single extinguisher against a fully engulfed car. Not much chance.
Can you just imagine standing there?
Yeah.
Watching your car, full of your most valued stuff, just go up in smoke, and you're calm, eerily calm.
It's a really arresting image, and that detail, that calmness, it's like the first major red flag flapping in the wind, isn't it?
But even before we dive deeper into his reaction, we hit this weird little snag, something I call records roulette.
Records roulette, what's that?
It's this frustrating thing you see in cold cases sometimes, where even basic facts get muddled early on. Our sources actually conflict on the make and model of the car.
Wait, the car, the thing that was on fire.
Yep. Early police releases and a WMUR update from just last year, they listed as a Saab. Consistently a Saab.
Okay.
Family interviews and reports from that podcast Murder, she told, they describe it very clearly as a green Mercury Topaz.
Hold on. Saab versus Mercury Topaz. That's not even close. How does that happen? If they can't even agree on the type of car he was supposedly so attached to?
Right.
Wow.
All right.
That feels sloppy. Or maybe just shows the chaos of those first few hours. What does that kind of inconsistency mean for an investigation?
Well, that's the problem with records roulette. Think about the initial moments of a big incident, a fire. Someone missing information is flying everywhere. From the caller, witnesses, first responders.
Chaos.
Total chaos. Misunderstandings, stress, simple mistakes, they happen. But something like the car model, Saab versus Topaz, it might seem small, but it could have knock-on effects.
Like what?
Like what if the first BOLO, the alert for a suspect vehicle, described the wrong car? What if the investigators were looking for Saab parts in the debris? What if witness memories got shaped by that early, maybe incorrect information?
She could send them down the wrong path right from the start. Exactly. It undermines your confidence in those foundational facts, makes everything that comes after harder to verify. It's a core challenge in cold cases. How good were those initial notes, really? And did any mistakes back then matter later?
That makes piecing it together so much tougher. And like you said, the firefighter seeing him so calm, that clashed hard with what his family expected, thought he'd be devastated over the car, the contents. So was it shock, disassociation, or something else?
It's a huge psychological question mark. Usually you'd expect distress, anger, despair.
Yeah.
You know, seeing everything you value destroyed. His eerily accepting demeanor, as some sources put it, immediately makes you think, okay, was this an inside job? Was it staged? Was he somehow involved or knew what was coming? It's just a really unusual reaction.
It really is.
Yeah.
But the key time frame for when he actually physically disappeared, it's incredibly short, a really tight 30-minute window.
Yeah, remarkably narrow.
Around 3:15 a.m., Curtis's supervisor calls him. They talk on the phone. Confirmed. Curtis is still in the guard shack. He's there.
Yeah.
Accounted for.
Okay, 3:15 a.m., he's there.
But by 3:45 a.m., just 30 minutes later, a coworker shows up for the next shift. Finds the guard shack empty.
Just empty.
The silence must have been chilling.
And that 30-minute slice, roughly 3:15 to 3:45 a.m., that's what investigators pinpoint as the critical window, the time he vanished. But here's what makes that window even more significant, almost undeniable evidence of something sinister. During that exact time frame, 3:20 to 3:45 a.m., the coworker arriving, he sees two cars speeding off the property.
Whoa, wait. Two cars?
Two separate vehicles, flying out, as one source puts it, leaving in a hurry right as Curtis disappears.
Okay, that's not just a detail. That's huge. That screams foul play, not just someone wandering off.
Absolutely. Two cars speeding away in that precise window. It strongly suggests a coordinated action, possibly an abduction.
Wow, okay, two cars leaving fast right when he vanishes. That sounds way less like a guy with MS just deciding to walk away, and a lot more like a planned exit.
Yeah.
Or a forced removal. Which brings us right into the other weird things found on site, the red flags that make this so much more than just a missing person case.
Yeah, the deeper you dig, the clearer it gets that Curtis Pishon vanishing wasn't like a standalone event. It was tangled up with other major criminal stuff happening right there that same night.
So not just the car fire, more was going on.
Exactly. The car fire definitely got the first attention, brought the fire trucks and police. But other weird, destructive things happened during Curtis's shift that were only found after he was already missing.
Like what?
Well, one of the most striking things, someone used a forklift, a heavy industrial forklift, to ram a door open.
A forklift, not just a crowbar.
Nope. A forklift. It suggests they really wanted in or maybe wanted to move something heavy. And beyond that, vending machines, change machines in the cafeteria area. Smashed up. Presumably for the cash inside.
Okay, so we've got arson, a break-in using heavy machinery, and theft, all happening around the same time.
Right. WMUR's case file explicitly confirms these were two separate crimes happening concurrently. Pishon's car fire A&D, the cafeteria break-in with the forklift. And here's the really crucial part, the thing that points towards planning. The police didn't even find out about the break-in until after Curtis was discovered missing.
So the car fire worked as a distraction.
It really looks that way, a potential coordinated diversion. Light the fire, draw all the attention over here, occupy the only security guard, bring in emergency services, while the real goal, the theft or whatever else is happening over there, unseen.
Wow, that completely changes the feel of it. That suggests like professionals, or at least people who plan this out. Not just random vandalism. It's chilling.
It really is.
And then you have those two getaway cars. Sources say witnesses saw two cars flying out of there during that critical 3:20 to 3:45 a.m. window, the exact time Curtis vanished. But here's where it gets, frankly, unbelievable and deeply concerning from an investigation standpoint. No BOLO, no be on the lookout alert was issued for those vehicles until after the morning shift change.
A 14-hour delay.
14 hours. In a potential abduction case, time is everything. What does a delay like that actually mean for investigation?
Oh, it's devastating. It's hard to overstate how critical those first few hours are. A 14-hour delay, think about it.
It could be anywhere.
Hundreds of miles away, across state lines. The cars could be hidden, repainted, even taken apart. Any witnesses who saw them hours earlier. Their memory is fading fast. CCTV footage from gas stations, roadsides, might be overwritten already. License plate readers, missed them.
Any evidence dropped along the way? Gone.
Exactly. Physical evidence on the cars, things tossed out the window. Long gone. Standard police work says you get that BOLO out immediately for cars fleeing a suspicious scene. You have to capitalize on that initial window.
So that delay, it's a massive, potentially catastrophic lost lead right at the beginning.
It absolutely underscores a critical lapse, one that likely handicapped the entire investigation from the get-go.
It's just frustrating to think about what might have happened if that alert went out right away. And then we circle back to the calm victim paradox and the things he left behind. We talked about his weirdly calm reaction to the fire, how it didn't match his known personality, fueling those inside job or staged event theories.
Right.
But let's look closer at what was found in the guard shack, because those items tell a story too, right?
Right, they absolutely do. And they strongly argue against him leaving voluntarily or planning his departure.
Okay, like what?
First, his cigarettes and lighter were left behind. His family was adamant he was a chain smoker.
So leaving those, that's weird for a heavy smoker.
Very weird. It's a known behavior anomaly, as investigators might call it, like leaving your phone if you're glued to it. Highly unusual, especially if you were just stepping out for a minute.
Okay, what else?
His lunch was there, uneaten. Suggests he didn't expect to be leaving, or at least not for long. There's also a new box of boots.
Huh. New boots?
But maybe the most significant item, especially considering his health, according to his family, a folding wheelchair he sometimes used on his bad MS days. That was also left behind.
Ah. Okay, now that, combined with the MS, the varying mobility, that feels huge. That screams abduction, not walking off.
Doesn't it?
A guy with MS, maybe having a bad day, doesn't have his wheelchair. He's not just going to scroll away from a crime scene and vanish.
Yeah.
Especially not if he's trying to get away from someone or make a clean break. It makes a voluntary disappearance seem, well, almost physically impossible, depending on his condition that day.
It really undermines that theory profoundly. It paints a picture of vulnerability, not capability for a quick escape.
Exactly.
And then, just to add another layer of confusion, there's the whole missing gun intrigue.
Right, the gun. What's the story there?
Curtis had bought a 9mm pistol just weeks before he disappeared. You know, ex-cop might want protection. That makes sense. But the accounts clash completely on what happened to it. Unsolved Mysteries, which is a pretty big platform, they reported the gun turned up later at his apartment.
At his apartment. So not taken during the incident.
Right. Which, if true, could lean towards a suicide theory, maybe? He leaves, goes home, uses it, except, crucially, no remains were ever found, anywhere.
But other reports say different.
Yes. Other, more recent reports, including from law enforcement updates, still list that 9mm pistol as missing, unaccounted for.
So it could have been taken from him that night, maybe used against him.
That's the implication if it's truly missing. It points much more towards foul play, abduction, maybe even murder with the victim's own weapon.
So another case of records roulette, but this time with a potential weapon, found versus missing. Suicide versus foul play, that's a massive fork in the road.
It really is. The gun's actual status is critical, but it remains unresolved, another one of those frustrating ambiguities hanging over the case.
Given all these odd details, the potential diversions, the misleads, like the BOLO, it really makes you question the initial investigation. How effective was it overall? Let's talk about the investigation itself. What went right, what went wrong, and the questions that are still unanswered.
Well, looking at the immediate response, on paper it actually seemed quite strong, which you could call an initial win.
Okay, what did they do right?
Seabrook PD was there fast, and they were joined very quickly by the New Hampshire State Police Major Crime Unit and arson units, too. Getting those specialized resources involved early is definitely a positive.
So they recognized it was serious right away.
Seems like it. They classified it quickly as a joint arson missing person case. The State Police Major Crime Unit, the ones who handle the really serious stuff, they were on scene by dawn. That shows they understood the potential gravity.
And boots on the ground. What were they doing at the scene?
They set up an evidence grid pretty quickly, covering the plant grounds, and importantly, that marshy area right behind the parking lot where the car burned.
Systematically searching.
Right. A grid search helps make sure nothing gets missed, helps map where any evidence is found. Plus, they brought in cadaver dogs early on in 2000, and then again in 2005, and again in 2010.
Repeated searches with dogs.
Yeah, those dogs are trained to find human remains even after a long time. Using them repeatedly shows a real sustained effort to find Curtis or evidence of what happened to him on or near the property.
And the case didn't just disappear into a file cabinet.
No, eventually it was elevated to the Attorney General's cold case unit. That usually means more resources, dedicated investigators, and they've kept it in the public eye with media pushes 2010, 2015, 2020, just last year in 2023. These are all signs of a serious long-term commitment.
Okay, those are definitely positives that shows they haven't given up.
Yeah.
Then you have the other side, the significant lapses that our sources really point to, things that might have just kneecapped the investigation early on. We already talked about that unbelievable 14-hour delay issuing the BOLO for those 2 speeding cars. The implications of that are just huge.
It's a monumental lost opportunity. Impossible to get that time back. The trail just goes cold so fast.
But it wasn't just the cars, was it? What about other evidence?
No, it wasn't. Remember the forklift? The one used to ram the door and smash the machines?
Yeah, seemed like a key piece of evidence. Fingerprints, maybe DNA.
Exactly, but it was only examined days later, not immediately.
Days. Why?
We don't know the exact reason for the delay, but by the time they processed it, any fingerprints that might have been there were significantly degraded.
Meaning useless.
Or much harder to get a match from, yeah. Degradation happens from weather, being touched, wiped. Time is the enemy of fingerprints. And this delay might connect to something else. Specialized FBI help, like profilers and forensic experts, that didn't come in until after the case got moved to the AG's cold case unit in 2005, years later.
Ah, okay. So you're saying the delay in getting that high-level FBI support might explain why crucial, time-sensitive evidence like the forklift prints got missed or degraded in the first place.
It's a very plausible connection. The resources and expertise that might have prioritized processing that forklift immediately perhaps weren't available or weren't utilized until years had passed.
That's incredibly frustrating. It feels like connecting the dots in hindsight.
It often is in cold cases. And there was another big delay, the employee background checks.
What about them?
A full sweep, checking criminal records, interviewing everyone who worked there, confirming alibis for that night that didn't happen until 2003.
3 years after he disappeared.
3 years. By then, at least 2 individuals considered persons of interest, POIs, had already moved out of state.
Making them much harder to track down and talk to.
Exactly. People move on, memories fade, lives change. That initial window for gathering information from coworkers closed significantly over those 3 years.
So if you put all these delays together, the 14-hour BOLO wait, the days waiting to check the forklift, the years before FBI profiling, the 3 years for the employee sweep. It really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does.
The case doesn't even hit the cold case unit until 2005. FBI help comes after that.
Yeah.
These aren't just isolated incidents. They're critical delays that likely had a massive impact. Maybe the reason why evidence degraded, why leads went cold, why people slipped away.
It starkly highlights the challenge. Missed early opportunities can cripple an investigation, making it exponentially harder, sometimes impossible, to solve years down the line. You're always left wondering, what if?
What if they'd done X, Y, or Z differently on day one?
Precisely. But even with these major hurdles, investigators did develop some strong theories about what might have happened. And, importantly, they identified a specific person of interest.
Okay, so let's get into the theories.
Yeah.
What are the main possibilities investigators have considered? The first one, and it seems pretty compelling given the break-in and everything, is that Curtis confronted robbers and was abducted.
Right, the robbery confrontation scenario.
Yeah, there's something Curtis himself said that really fuels this. Weeks before he disappeared, he told his brother something pretty explosive. He suspected drug deals were going down in the parking lot.
Whoa, okay, that changes things significantly.
Right. If that's true, he might not have just stumbled onto guys breaking into vending machines. He might have interrupted something much bigger, much more dangerous.
Like organized drug trafficking happening right there on the property.
Exactly. And a lone security guard, even an ex-cop, interrupting a major drug deal. That's a serious problem for the dealers.
They wouldn't just say, excuse us. They'd need to neutralize the threat, the witness, quickly.
Makes abduction, or worse, seem like a very real possibility in that context. It gives a powerful, terrifying motive.
And the coordinated crimes we talked about, the car fire happening at the same time as the forklift break-in, that fits this perfectly.
How so?
It suggests planning, a diversion, create chaos with the fire to draw attention away while the real operation, maybe retrieving drugs or money, happens elsewhere. A roaming guard like Curtis is a direct obstacle to that kind of planned operation.
So getting rid of him becomes part of the plan.
Potentially, yes. Or an improvisation when he discovers them. Either way, it points towards professionals, or at least determined criminals, not just petty thieves.
And then there's his physical condition, the MS, the varying mobility, the wheelchair, possibly left behind.
That makes the abduction scenario much more plausible than him just walking away.
Yeah, could he even run? Especially if it was a bad MS day. Could he fight back effectively against multiple people? Could he outrun two speeding cars? It seems incredibly unlikely.
It really does. His potential physical limitations make him a much more likely target for a forced removal than someone who could easily escape or fight back.
Okay, so theory one, robbery drug deal confrontation leading to abduction. Seems strong. But then there's theory two. Very different, kind of unsettling.
The staged vanishing or suicide theory.
Yeah. And the biggest piece of evidence for this theory goes back to his weird calmness at the car fire.
That calm victim paradox again.
Right. Watching his prized possessions burn, yet being eerily accepting, it just didn't mesh with how his family knew him. It makes you wonder, did he know it was going to happen? Did he want it to happen?
It creates that nagging doubt, that cognitive dissonance. Was it shock or was it something else? Was he complicit? Did he arrange it?
And the missing gun plays right into this theory too, doesn't it?
Absolutely central to it. If that 9mm meter pistol was found at his apartment, like Unsolved Mysteries reported.
Then maybe he went home, planned to disappear, maybe planned suicide.
It opens that door. It lends some credence to the idea he left voluntarily, possibly with a tragic end in mind elsewhere. But, and this is the huge but,
No remains.
no remains have ever been found. Suicide without remains is possible, but very rare and hard to prove. And the fact that other reports say the gun is still missing, it completely muddies the water.
Yeah.
That conflict keeps this theory perpetually unresolved.
And the lack of other evidence at the scene itself. No blood, no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away from the shack. Could that also point to a planned departure?
It could be interpreted that way. Either someone was very careful removing him, covering their tracks, or he was very careful in staging his own disappearance, leaving no trace. It's a chilling alternative.
It really is. So these are the main theories. But the investigation didn't just stay theoretical, did it? They actually identified a specific person.
They did. A concrete antagonist emerged. Robert E. April.
Robert E. April. Who was he?
He was a former coworker of Curtis's at the plant, and in 2005, 5 years after Curtis vanished, authorities publicly named him a person of interest.
So not just a random name, someone connected to the workplace, publicly flagged by police.
Exactly. And the details surrounding April are, well, alarming.
What kind of details?
There's a 2011 affidavit that's a sworn legal statement quoting April, allegedly bragging that he killed the missing person from Seabrook and buried him.
He bragged about killing Curtis Pishon.
According to this affidavit, yes. And it also stated he threatened to do the same thing to another man. Just incredibly brazen and disturbing statements.
Wow. What did the police do when they heard this? Did they talk to April?
They tried. But when they approached him based on these statements, April refused to take a polygraph examination.
Okay, refusing a lie detector test isn't proof of guilt. Can't use it in court. But it definitely makes you raise an eyebrow, right? Especially after bragging about murder.
It certainly adds to the cloud of suspicion around him, yes. It often suggests someone might have something to hide, even if it's not legally admissible.
So April worked with Curtis. He allegedly bragged about killing him. He refused a polygraph. This sounds like a really strong lead.
It was treated as a very strong lead. His connection as a coworker meant he knew the plant, maybe knew Curtis's routines. The alleged bragging reported by credible sources, that's something investigators had to take extremely seriously.
And they did more than just try to talk to him, right? They acted on these tips about April in a pretty dramatic way.
Oh, yeah. In 2010, based on information pointing towards April, detectives undertook a massive, intense search operation.
What did they do?
They excavated a filled-in swimming pool at 128 South Main Street, a property associated with April.
They dug up a swimming pool, looking
for Curtis's remains. Imagine the scene. Heavy machinery, backhoes, tearing through concrete, digging into the earth where a pool used to be. The hope, the tension, thinking this might finally be it. The answer.
That's incredible. The resources, the effort.
Yeah.
It shows how seriously they took the possibility April buried him there.
It really does. It was a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
A painstaking search through layers of dirt and fill, all based on the tips linking April to the disappearance and potential burial site.
What did they find?
Nothing.
Nothing after all that.
Nothing. The excavation came up completely empty. That image, the heavy equipment, the torn up ground, and then nothing. It just perfectly captures the frustrating, often heartbreaking nature of this case.
Wow. To have such a specific lead, a named person of interest, a potential burial site, and still come up empty. It highlights how incredibly hard it can be to find remains, even when you think you know where to look.
Exactly. Time, the elements, the difficulty of locating clandestine graves. Even with a strong suspect and specific tips, the ground doesn't always give up its secrets. It's a stark reminder of the challenges investigators face. Hashtag outro.
So we've really walked through the tangled layers of Curtis Pishon's disappearance, haven't we?
We have.
From that shocking car fire, his bizarrely calm reaction to the coordinated crimes, the forklift, the break-in happening that same night.
Right under everyone's noses, almost.
Yeah, and the big investigative missteps, like that 14-hour BOLO delay, that might have changed everything early on for the conflicting theories.
Robbery gone wrong versus staged disappearance.
And exploring that critical 30-minute window when he just vanished. Plus that dramatic but ultimately unsuccessful search linked to the person of interest, Robert E. April. Digging up a pool.
Wow. It's a case that just keeps you guessing, doesn't it? The conflicting stories, the missed chances right at the start that snowballed, the sheer strangeness of it all. And it's important for you to know, the New Hampshire Attorney General's Cold Case Unit still considers this an active investigation. They strongly suspect foul play.
Meaning they don't think he just walked away. They believe he was a victim of a crime.
That's the official stance, yes.
Which means there's still hope. Hope for answers, maybe hope for justice for Curtis and his family. And that's where you, our listeners, might come in. If you have any information at all about Curtis Pishon's disappearance, seriously, no matter how small or insignificant you think it might be.
Something you saw back then, something you heard, a rumor.
Exactly. Please contact the New Hampshire Cold Case Tip Line. Sometimes the smallest detail can be the key that unlocks a case like this, even after decades. And his family has kept a $10,000 reward active since 2015 for information that leads to answers about what happened to Curtis.
All these conflicting accounts, the missed opportunities, the inherent strangeness, it really leaves you with a stark reminder about unsolved mysteries. Sometimes the most vital details are the ones that are fuzzy from the start or get lost or maybe were never properly recorded, and you're left wondering, what if just one thing, one report, one action had been different in those first critical hours? What might we know today?
It really makes you think. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what stands out most to you? What's the single most perplexing detail in the strange disappearance of Curtis Pishon?